Hi everyone, I'm going to analyze a universe from nothing. According to the Bible, God created the universe out of nothing. Now, does that mean that he took this thing called nothing and mixed it up and then created the universe? No, that's not what it means. It just simply means that God couldn't create the universe out of himself, because then the universe would be God's stuff. The universe would be divine, but the universe is not divine. And the universe couldn't be created out of some other pre-existing matter, because there was no pre-existing matter according to the Bible. So that leaves one more option, that the universe was just, it wasn't there, and then God spoke and said whatever God said. He spoke it into existence, and there wasn't any other material, whether his own being or some other pre-existing matter that was used. It was just from, there was nothing before. Okay, now that's believed to be what Christian theology involves. Now, when the Big Bang theory was invented by Hubble and Einstein and some others, mainly Hubble, but Einstein contributed, it was immediately clear that, according to the invention of this theory, that the universe had a start. And so a lot of church people, Christians, said, well, of course it has a start. We knew it has a start. And God created it at that point, and here we are. So there's been, there's nothing, no pre-existing matter or anything. So it looks exactly, from some respects, what Christians are looking for. Now, it's an old scenario, supposedly, and very, very large, whereas the Bible seems to be talking about a small cosmos that's not very old at all, maybe 5,000-10,000 years. So there's that. But when it was found to have a beginning, that was just a huge issue for some people in the religious community. So there's been a, science then, was replete with scientists who wanted to show that there is a reason for the start that is not supernatural. That's fine. It's a good question to ask. When we listen to Lawrence Krauss talk about, he wants to say that the universe came into existence out of nothing, and it's perfectly spontaneous. It makes complete logical, mathematical, and scientific sense. And here's why he's going to explain. And there's no God needed.
Because using the miracle of modern mathematics, you can rewrite that equation. And now this is a small step for a mathematician, but a giant leap for a physicist. Not because it's that hard to put this term over there, most of us could do that, but because it now represents something very different when it's on this side of the equations. Here it was somehow a geometric quantity. When it's here, it looks like a new contribution of the energy and momentum of the universe. What could contribute a term like this? And we know the answer. Nothing. By nothing, I don't mean nothing, I mean nothing. If you take empty space, and that means get rid of all the particles, all the radiation, absolutely everything, so there's nothing there. If that nothing weighs something.
You may not care, and Lawrence Krauss may not care, but if it matters to anybody listening, Lawrence Krauss here is talking in ways that violate the basic laws of logic, and that you would take in your introductory philosophy class. And that may not sound like a big deal, but it's like saying 2 + 2 = 9 is kind of the idea. He just said, if nothing weighs something, if no thing weighs something, that's like saying 0 + 0 = 1. So this is kind of how this talk goes a little bit. This is supposedly the great discovery, which is really just a theory. But this is kind of what I've heard out there is being touted as the answer to say we have this explanation of the universe that just spontaneously comes into existence out of nothing, with no God, no Jesus needed. And let's just be honest here. We're gonna find out that this is not true. Okay, I'm not just saying that because I'm a Christian theist. It's really true. And people know it. This is a joke. You can't say that nothing has a weight. I mean, you put that in an academic philosophy paper and submit it to any journal, any of the major journals you want, you won't get published. But you're a physicist, I guess it's different. This is what makes academia propaganda, and this stems from agendas, biases, and so forth. That's what you're seeing here. When he says, get rid of all the particles and everything, there's nothing there. And then he says there's space there. Space is not nothing. Space is a thing, something, not nothing. So he's violating 500 years, really 2,500 years of science and philosophy, going way back to the ancient Greeks, where the ancient atomists, some of them talked about reality being atoms in a void, but that was figured out that simply can't make any sense. You can't have a particle go from nowhere to nowhere, or be at no place and then go to another no place. That's just not how, when we figure out how reality works, we figure it out because it makes sense. That's one thing we can do to figure out physical reality. We can figure it out because it follows logic. Now, the supernatural realm of God follows a higher order logic. So sometimes that appears as absurdity, but I'm not talking about that in this video. I'm just talking about from a scientific perspective. And Lawrence Krauss, I don't care how many people in the audience, I don't care how prestigious he is and how many Richard Dawkins debates he's in and so forth, what he's talking about is wrong. Okay? That's just that simple. Just because I don't understand how this can happen. I mean, this is the guy who would attack me and saying that I'm completely ridiculous and a horrible person and illogical for being a worshiper of Jesus. But he says this. He says something is nothing. And that's that. Anyway, everything's just kind of backwards. It's just sort of baffling. I don't really know how this works this way. It's almost like, let's say, the most absurd thing possible. But if we have, PhD scientists behind, and everybody thinks we're great. Oh, that's okay. The scientists, they always talk over our head. We don't understand because they're so technical. No, he's talking in contradiction. He's wrong. He is incorrect. There is no, he's just a smart scientist talking over our head. No, this is irresponsible, and this should not be promoted in any way. This is absurdity and ridiculous, saying something is nothing. Just wait, it gets worse and worse. So anyway, let's just get back to this.
Then it contributes a term like this. Now, that sounds ridiculous. Why should nothing weigh something? Nothing is nothing. And the answer is nothing isn't nothing anymore.
Okay, that's obviously very important right there. I don't know exactly why, but many of the atheists and so forth that are promoting this as a refutation of Christianity and the Logos, Christ, creating reality, our reality out of nothing. That's creation ex nihilo that we talked about a few minutes ago. So what he just said right there, nothing isn't nothing anymore. That means that he's talking about something different than the concept of nothing that's been used in philosophy, and then later when science came on, philosophy for the last 2,500 years and science when it came on over the last 500. Nothing always specifically meant something that has no properties, something that cannot be denoted by language. not a vacuum, not empty space, not an empty vessel that's just air or anything like that. Those are not nothing. Nothing is there. You can't say anything about nothing. An actual nothingness. That's what Christianity is referring to when they say that Jesus, the Logos, created reality out of nothing. Again, that's a theological point extracted from Scripture. It doesn't say in the Bible he created. It says there was just void, which that means there was nothing before the universe. So void means a nothingness, an actual nothing, not empty space or something. So Krauss is using a different term. He shouldn't be using the term nothingness. He's just going to confuse everybody. It's almost like, I don't want to get conspiratorial here, I guess. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But it's almost like he used the word nothing purposely. We know he's not talking about nothing. He can't say nothing is something and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's almost like he's laughing through this video. And Richard Dawkins is almost kind of, when he introduced him, it's almost like we're going to get the Christians. We're going to just make up a bunch of, garbage and then go tell the world we've refuted Christianity and we can say the universe created itself out of nothing. Spontaneously sprang out. We don't need a God to create a universe ex nihilo. Well, what he just said right there, nothing is not nothing anymore, means that he can say whatever he wants from this point in the video. He's not talking about Christian theology, and anything he says doesn't apply to Christian theology. And this video this talk of his does not have any refutation or critique or anything at all to do with Christianity. They're independent topics. Now, atheists ever are lining up to say that he's refuted Christianity at creation ex nihilo. There can't be any Jesus creator because there's not needed. Science can explain it all. Is false. End of story. And this is curious that this all exists. Again, to repeat in different words, it's almost as if some people in the scientific community got together and said, let's go tell the world creation ex nihilo can be explained by science without a creator, and we'll come up with some talks and some books and stuff. And it doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. If we just tell the world, they'll believe it. The atheists will line up and think they're smart, and Christians will get all mad and think that there's something to attack here, but really there's just nothing here.
Sounds ridiculous. Why should nothing weigh something? Nothing is nothing. And the answer is nothing isn't nothing anymore in physics because of the laws of quantum mechanics and special relativity on extremely small scales. Nothing is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence in a time scale so short you can't see them.
Now, I don't know if you heard it, but a little while ago in a previous clip, he said if you remove all the particles and absolutely everything, you have nothing. And now he just said what nothing is a bunch of particles. So he literally said nothing is and is not particles.
Nothing is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence in a time scale so short you can't see them.
Okay, that's again what he just said. And now let me play the earlier clip. I'm going to play the two back to back. You're going to see we have a bit of a problem.
Nothing. By nothing, I don't mean nothing, I mean nothing. If you take empty space, and that means get rid of all the particles, all the radiation, absolutely everything, so there's nothing there. If that nothing weighs something.
Now, you can hear people laughing in the audience. And we're told that all these famous people like Daniel Dennett, who's not even a physicist, are in the audience. And Richard Dawkins is apparently there. He's not a physicist. And everybody's laughing. And you probably thought I was going over the top by saying, perhaps they're here as sort of a ruse. Literally just let's make up some crazy thing and use our supposed notoriety to push it on the world and attack Christianity, but the laughing almost seems to reinforce. Well, I've never heard an academic lecture where the presenter is giving such contradictions, and Krauss looks like he's kind of smirking and laughing through this. They, like I said, they did, Dawkins and him did that a lot at the beginning, and then people in the audience are laughing when the contradictions happen. Again, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but it's hard not to. I mean, it does seem like this is really just kind of a joke. The whole Krauss book is sort of a put-on. I mean, if you watch debates with Krauss, with people like William Lane Craig and so forth, I mean, he clearly gets beaten. I'm not just saying that because I'm a theist. I mean, like Matt from the Austin Atheist Experience, he beats Christians in debates. I'm not going to say all Christians always win or something. I mean, anyway, my point is that if you see Krauss debate people, he clearly gets defeated. What he does is he always skirts around the issues and always starts pointing at William Lane Craig. This is a bad man. He promotes, some people going to hell. What a bad, he's red herrings all over the place. A lot like Richard Dawkins' technique. So I don't know. Anyway, let's just keep going with this. Here are the clips back to back again.
Nothing is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence in a time scale so short you can't see them. Nothing. By nothing, I don't mean nothing, I mean nothing. If you take empty space, and that means get rid of all the particles, all the radiation, absolutely everything, so there's nothing there. If that nothing weighs something, nothing is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles, all the radiation, absolutely everything. So there's nothing there. Nothing is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles, all the radiation, absolutely everything. So there's nothing there. Bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles, bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles, bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles, bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles.
I would challenge any of you to go down to your local university and talk to the physics department and show them this video, or just show them clips of Krauss and say, he's saying that there's particles and not particles. That's what nothingness is. So there's P and not P. You can make up a logical equation, as you can see on your screen there. I have it written as D and not D. And do you agree with this contradiction existing as a description of a nothingness that the universe comes out of? And I will bet you that 99 out of 100 of your physicists that you talk to will not agree. Will just say this is word salad. This is mush. So he's talking about the seething of particles coming in and out of existence. Yeah, I mean, this is what physicists have been talking about Paul Davies in Superforce wrote about it. I remember the first time I saw it, that was way back. I think that book goes back a ways. I quoted it in a couple of papers I published. So yeah, this is not a new idea. But the most important point is why in the world is anybody calling this nothing? I mean, if you're changing the definition, can you at least clarify I'm not talking about absolute nothingness, non-existence, that which language can't denote because there's no word object assignment because there's no object. So anyway, I just don't get how this can be. I'm genuinely baffled. I guess I'm just at a loss for words. I don't understand how this happens. How all these smart PhD people are going for this. I thought these were the free thinkers, that are critical thinkers. And this is what we get. And this is all supposed to be the big threat to Christianity. The only reason this is a threat to Christianity is because nobody's looking into it, nobody's critical thinking, and everybody in the media and universities are just telling everybody this is the facts and Christianity's in trouble. So it's all just fiat information. Because we said so, it's true.
Nothing is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence.
Scientists will get on TV and say, we question our ideas. we like that. We like mystery and not knowing and questioning things so we can discover and all this romantic stuff. Maybe some of that goes on sometimes, but it's not going on here. This is some sort of strange story or philosophy or idea or something that is just a contradiction. So it's fair for me to disregard it. Contradictions are not part of professional scientific discovery. They're not part of empirical information. They're typically, to be honest, part of theology and religious information, because we run into situations there where contradiction is bumped into by, because we're dealing with infinities in religion. God is an infinity. So by definition of an infinity, you're going to be describing it in terms of contradictions. Okay. Now that, of course, doesn't mean God doesn't exist. That means that God is beyond understanding, so our knowledge breaks down. You can't say contradictions exist in the analysis of the physical, observable universe. This is the same terminology physicists use. They'll say about a black hole singularity, they'll say the laws of physics that are known break down, and things are described in terms of contradiction. And that's the same thing, roughly, that I just said. When you're analyzing God, you get to the source of things, language, and observability, and the laws of reality that are invented by humans break down, and contradictions emerge. Just like the physicist doesn't say the singularity doesn't exist, we also don't have need to say God doesn't exist. We say they're beyond the bounds of perception. Okay, so very, very straightforward issue. If a biologist gets up, let's say an evolutionary biologist, and gets up in front of the university crowd and says, "Good morning, today I'm going to describe my the theory of evolution in terms of a very straightforward logical contradiction that natural selection does and does not exist. And this is going to explain how creatures evolved," or something. That doesn't exist in academia. Well, exists here in terms of so-called physics in Krauss's video, but it doesn't exist anywhere else. I inhabited universities my whole life, taught for 16 years, been a student, constantly a student now in seminary. And this isn't how people talk. This is just Lawrence Krauss. And he's pushed in the media, just like Dawkins talks in the same, not quite this sloppy, but Dawkins, lots of red herrings. And anyway, I can discuss this a lot more. But all that we need to note at this point is that the idea that the universe creates itself out of nothing has not been described by Lawrence Krauss. And we don't need to argue this point. We can just say it's described as a contradiction and disregard it. And we don't need to pay attention to this. There's the most power in just ignoring something like this. In other words, just saying it's a contradiction and it's to be disregarded and move on. And if somebody wants clarification, just say, because nothing is described in terms of a logical contradiction. And you can't describe nothing anyways. There's nothing to discuss. There's no object that is denoted in a nothingness. Like when I say the word nothingness, I'm using a word that does not have a reference. So anyways, so there's no threat, obviously, from Lawrence Krauss to Christian theology. And of course not to Christianity itself.
Bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles. Bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles. Bubbling brew of virtual particles that get rid of all the particles. The universe is flat. It has zero total energy, and it could have begun from nothing. And I've written a piece, although of course I got a lot of hate mail, saying that in my mind this answers this crazy question that religious people always keep throwing out, which is, why is there something rather than nothing? The answer is there had to be. If you have nothing in quantum mechanics, you'll always get something. It's that simple. It doesn't convince any of those people, but it's true. Now, and we don't have the slightest idea why it's there. Now, that's what I just said. This tells us that we are more insignificant than we ever imagined. Why such a universe in which we're so irrelevant would be made for us is beyond me. Okay, good. I wanted a little bit of applause. Now we can go back to the science.
Thank you, Lawrence, for a wonderful talk.